Good morning. My name is Jerry Bohr. I served in the United States Army from 1986 to almost 1995. I'm currently rated at 100%. I'm actually rated at 70%, but am granted the 30% for unemployability, which brings me up to 100% total. I'm from the state of Iowa. I've been dealing with the VA for, since I got out of the military, and it's become a nightmare. I used to be a veteran service officer, so I do know a little bit about the claims processing and how things work. Well, it's not working now. We have a issue with a lot of outsourcing at the VA to speed up the claims processing, and I'm here today to tell you about my situation, which has currently caused me undue stress, anxiety, hardships. I've contacted multiple people, including directors, the debt management centers, anywhere where I got a letter. I've received so much mail from out of state, from the Evidence Intake Center in Janesville, Wisconsin, to the Debt Management Center, the Henry Whipple Federal Building in Minnesota. I've received it from my own VA regional office. I've received it from congressmen and senators and stuff like that. I don't know if anybody really gets the point. I don't know if anybody reads the laws. And I don't know if there's anybody out there actually advocating for veterans. So I would just like to tell you about my situation since 2010. In 2010, I was granted 100% and unemployable. Previous to that, my ex-wife, I had went through divorce, and my ex-wife had filed for apportionments multiple times. It seems like every time she filed for one, the VA would deny it, or if I had to go down for a hearing, the VA would take the hearing, she would have the hearing, and they would also deny it. Well, since 2010, I've been dealing with this latest apportionment, and approximately it's been going on since, about up to 2016. And VA had denied these apportionments for undue hardship. And I had lived with my dad and my brothers and stuff like that. I was waiting on my own claim for approximately 10 years prior to that. So I was 60% waiting on the 70. And I was trying to get jobs, and I had postal jobs and everything that basically it was hard on my back, which I'm rated for my back and my knees. I had a knee replacement here approximately within 2 years and spent some time in the hospital. I had a tumor taken out in La Crosse through the choice program. And so it's been pretty tough. But then I'm trying to deal with this paperwork from the VA. I feel like I've gotten paperwork from every state of the union. If I write a letter back to them, I've sent letters to the board. I've sent letters to the Evidence Intake Center in Janesville. I've sent letters to Minnesota, and because I didn't know who I was dealing with. So as of 2010, they denied the apportionment till approximately somewhere in between 14, 15, and 16, the years there, and it continued on. Well, out of the blue, I have the paperwork right here. I'm just going to take a look at it. Out of the blue, in 2014, the appellate testified before the board. A transcript from that hearing is included in the claims file. And then it goes on to say in 2015, the board issued a decision which had since been vacated. And let me talk about that for a second. In 2015, approximately in 2015, out of the blue, I received a letter from the Court of Veterans Appeals. And in that letter, it had stated that they were going to apportion $600 and some dollars of my benefits. And this was totally out of the blue. I never knew anything about it. And if it was a court hearing, I would have liked to have been there to face my accusers or to let the VA hear my side. That never happened. So I immediately called the American Legion and a gentleman by the name of Darwin, who I knew when I was a veteran service officer. And I asked him who they represented. And Darwin said, "Why, you, Jerry." And I was a little bit perturbed, and I said, "The hell you do, sir." I said, "I just got this from the Court of Veterans Appeals. It says my ex-spouse was there, her lawyer was there, and the American Legion was there. And where was I? I wasn't even notified." I said, "You've just violated my due process rights." And the American Legion told me to send the documentation into them. They would take a look at it. They told me to give them a call back in 2 days. In 2 days, I called them back, and the secretary that answers the phone says, "Is this Jerry Bohr?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." "Well, we no longer represent you, and there's nothing we can do for you." I didn't know what to say. So I told her, I said, "Well, can I get that in writing, and can I get my medical folder back?" She said, "Yep. Still haven't received it today. Haven't heard a word." So I called VA, and I told them what the situation was, and I had contacted the board and the Court of Veterans Appeals, and I told them, "Look, my due process rights have been violated. I never knew anything about a hearing, anything about anything." And it came back that they vacated that decision. So then I heard from the VA, which if you look at this paperwork, it says in May 2016, the veteran testified before the board. A transcript from that hearing is included in the claims file. So basically what happened was when they vacated that decision, the VA contacted me and they said, "Look, being that that was vacated, we're going to have you go down there to another hearing before the judge, and your ex-spouse would go before the judge also and give your side, refill out your financial sheets, and we'll make a decision from there." So anyways, and what the judge told me, which it says on this paperwork here, it says the veteran and the appellant have waived the right to a third hearing in this appeal. Arneson versus Shinseki, 2011. I remember the judge telling me that you waived the right to any further appeals. This is it, or hearing on this appeal. And I was a little bit nervous because, first off, the VA didn't have any of my information, but they did vacate the decision. So I went ahead and went with it. Well, I waited for quite a while, and I received paperwork back finally. The paperwork from the VA, they had sent me back 2 different denials, actually. One was from 2017, November 16th. It says, they got back to me, they said, "We carefully considered your claim for the apportioned share of your benefits. After reviewing all the evidence submitted, the claim for apportionment must be denied because financial need had not been shown." 38 CFR 3.451. Well, it's kind of interesting simply because the VA had already denied it because of undue hardship before, but now they've come up with, they've denied it because financial need had not been shown on my ex-wife's side, because I know that her dad had passed away previously and she'd inherited quite a bit of money. He was a farmer. And she also was driving around in a brand new car with leather seats. And when I went down for my hearing with my dad, I asked the VA if they knew about any of this or anything was on her, if she had told the VA this. And I kind of looked at the judge, and I don't think he heard anything like that on her side. So anyways, when they finally denied this in 2017, I thought, okay, it's finally done. Well, out of the blue, sometime approximately, I don't know if it was 2 weeks or a month later, I received some paperwork from the Court of Veterans Affairs, or excuse me, the Court of Veterans Appeals. And basically what it said is the board, this is before this, but anyways, they got back to me and they basically, the claim was ongoing anyways, after they had already denied it. And I thought, well, somebody isn't telling somebody what they're doing. So I contacted the White House hotline, and they put me in charge with the National Call Center. And the National Call Center said, don't worry about it, Jerry, it's been denied. And I said, well, somebody's not telling somebody here what's going on here. I said, I'm kind of in a loss here, why the Court of Veterans Appeals is writing me. So anyways, after I'd called the National Call Center, I felt a little better. So I thought I'd just wait. And I thought, long time ago, sometimes as a veteran service officer, there's a delay there, whether it's in the mail and sometimes getting the story straight. So I figured it might just work itself out. Well, then I just kept receiving letters from the Court of Veterans Appeals, and every time I would do that, or the Board of Veterans Appeals anyways, I would just call the White House hotline. And most of the time they'd just call me, don't worry about it. Well, then out of the blue, I get a letter from Janesville, Wisconsin from the Evidence Intake Center. And here's part of the problem with the VA when you get all these different letters from different agencies. The Evidence Intake Center in Wisconsin just said, we're working on your claim and everything like that. And I'm sitting there going, it never told me what they were working on. And I thought, well, what's going on here? Well, then I'd contacted the White House hotline and I said, well, I got this letter here and I don't know what they're working on. And there's no way to get a hold of them. Well, then after I got off the phone with the White House hotline, I got a letter from the Minnesota Debt Management Center. And it said that they were going to take $1,591 out of my check monthly. They had made a decision. And I didn't know what to do. I thought $1,591 monthly. I thought, there's a big problem here because I recently moved from my other house that cost $44,000 because, I couldn't afford anything else because of waiting on my claim for the last 10 years prior to this. And then I finally now, after a tree hit my house, one landed on my garage that the VA didn't know about. I had 5 down in my backyard. I had 4 inches of rain in my basement. The washer and dryer were out. The furnace went out. And I was kind of stuck. Well, luckily enough, I got the place sold. And the VA, luckily enough, after filing a couple times for a VA loan, I finally got one through. And the worst of it is the place that I bought for $44,000, I had almost $20,000 paid off on it. Well, when I went to sell that place, the court said that there was a lien on the property, or the lawyer did anyway. And I said, well, that's not right. This is paid for by my VA disability, and that's protected under the United States Code 38, Title 5301. And the lawyer basically says, I don't know anything about that. He says, all I'm here to do is to try to get this house sold for the person that you bought it from. So I ended up, the person I bought it from, they told me, they said, Jerry, they said, just give it back to us, sign it back to us. We'll give you your money back when we get rid of the house. We're just interested in getting it paid off. Well, I had the person that wanted to buy it, and when they bought it, everything went through and I waited on it. Well, I called the people that I had signed it off on, and they told me that, they'd give me $4,000. I said, $4,000? I said, I've got almost $20,000 invested in this here. And then he says, that's all we want to give. We don't want to give any more. Well, then he told me, he said, well, Jerry, I know we owe you that money. It's his girlfriend or his wife doesn't want to give up the money. So we went back and forth, and finally he switched sides on me, and now they don't want to pay me any money. So I'm out another $20,000 where nobody seems to want to follow the laws, or they get away with it because I firmly would say VA doesn't enforce any of their laws. The only ones that they seem to want to enforce is apportionment, and the rest of the laws under Title 38, which is the VA Bible, nobody enforces, nobody takes a look at, nobody seems to care. And I find that kind of interesting. But back to my situation, I'm basically from the previous letters that I got from VA, and I got a multitude of letters here. The VA basically, from the Debt Management Center, said that they were going to take out $1,591 of my money. And So right away I contacted the lady and I told her, I says, ma'am, I told her about the house blowing down and me just getting into this new one. And basically, sorry about that. Let me just turn this off here a second. Anyways, the $1,591, I called the debt management center and I told the lady my story about the house and getting this and losing this and losing this. And she said, well, Jerry, this seems like a hardship. I'm going to contact VA and I'm going to get a hold of them. And I told her I hadn't got a hearing on this because all this paperwork out of the blue by VA, but I had already filed for it and I was sure it was going to come through. Well, she gets back to me and she said, well, Jerry, she said, we made it a point here. We're going to break it down to $320 a month. And I just told the lady specifically I didn't agree with that. And I said, it says on the bottom of this paper that you sent me that there's a $25 minimum. And I said, ma'am, I would do the $25 minimum if that's the only thing that you take until I have my hearing, until I can get this squared away. Well, she right away came back and she threatened me. She says, well, if you don't pay the $320 a month, if you don't agree to that, then we're just going to go ahead and take out the $1,591. And her tone to me was, it was a threat. And at that point, I told her, I says, ma'am, if you're going to take out $1,591, you obviously haven't read the laws. And then I asked her, under which law do you have a right to do this? And she didn't want to answer me. She kept trying to talk over me. I said, ma'am, under which law? And I repeated myself approximately 3 times. And then she finally says, well, Title 10. And Title 10, as a veteran service officer, I right away think about retirement or a retiree. And I said, well, ma'am, you do know I'm not a retiree. I'm a disabled veteran who did not retire. I said, I don't fall under Title 10. And she wouldn't tell me which laws or whatever they were supporting or anything about it. All she did was to say, after I questioned her, she said, well, I have people over me that told me that this is what they want done. So I wasn't getting anywhere there. And like I said, after I get off the phone with her, I'd receive another letter from Wisconsin, Minnesota, back to the debt management center from the regional office. So anyways, to make a long story short, I do have all the evidence here, which the evidence is not being told, and the truth is not being told. Because like I said, VA denied the apportionment. When the VA told me after they vacated the decision that I had to go down and get in front of the judge again, I agreed to it, filled out your financial sheets, and basically the judge came back in 2017. Now this is November 16, 2017. In the meantime, all this other stuff's going on, and I don't know if the left hand isn't telling the right hand what's going on, but I keep getting these letters and it's like it's ongoing. And it's like I said, the judge told me that this was the last hearing on there. He said both the appellant and we both agreed that this was it. So when it comes down to it, like I said, I was a little bit surprised here, and I was trying to contact people all around that could help me, but it said that the veteran and the appellant have waived the right to a third hearing on this appeal. So if that was the third hearing and we waived our rights and everything and the judge's decision was final when they vacated out of the Court of Veterans Appeals, why am I getting all this other paperwork? So in the meantime, I'm trying to deal with this, call people. I've called the Court of Veterans Appeals. They told me to call the Board of Veterans Appeals, and I talked to a couple different people there, and they said, you know, this is interesting. I'd like to talk to my supervisors, and we'll get back to you. Everybody has a story there. Everybody wants to get back to me, so I'm feeling pretty good. Maybe they'll get this clarified, and everything was going to get straightened out. Then I received a call out of the blue. It was from Iowa, and I believe it was from Des Moines, and there was a gentleman on there, and he just told me his first name. I thought it was Ben. And he went through the situation as it was, and he told me, he said, well, Jerry, you're a disabled veteran. You're not a retiree. You were 100% service connected, but you also get the special compensation because of some dysfunction and all these other things. And he asked me how much I was getting on my check and everything. And so I immediately contacted my bank and I looked at my bank account. So I went back 5 months and I basically got 5 different amounts that they're taking out of my check. And he explained it that they've been taken out since 2010. And basically what I did is I asked him, and I also contacted the director down there to do a audit on my account and find out where my money is going. Because by his words, I'm supposed to be making $3,364 something a month, minus the $102.30 that I take out for my son's life insurance on myself for my sons. And the VA, when they wrote me back a letter saying that they made the decision that they were going to take out $320, like somehow they had did me this great favor, like the gods have spoken, and they realized the hardship. So they were going to take out $320. So if you take $320 off that, I looked at my check in April, and I'm getting approximately $2,700, and there's still $200 and some dollars missing. So I'm wondering where that money is. And this gentleman from the VA, not a director or the assistant director, this guy named Ben, I thought it was, he was just as confused as I was. So he said he would look into it and he would get back to me. But in the meantime, I've talked to the director down there. I've talked to the assistant director, Chad Christensen, and both decent people. They were really decent to me, treated with me with a lot of respect. And they were a little bit confused as well. And Mr. Chad Christensen, the assistant director there, said that he would do an audit. And he also told me that he was a little bit confused when it came down to the Debt Management Center on what exactly they're doing. Because at no time has anybody told me under which laws they were using. I was asking them. So I did some research on offset, and I was also told that this was... Anyways, allotment. That's the word I'm looking for. I was told it was an allotment. So I said, well, ma'am, I've never heard of a VA allotment. So I looked up on the internet, VA allotment. Well, then it goes under 38, more of an offset. And basically, when you look at the laws from the Debt Management Center, what she was saying and what the law actually said, if they were going and using an offset, it said they can take up to 15%. Not $1,591, and then threaten me if I don't agree to the $320. So I don't know what you want to say about that. The law actually says that they're supposed to inform the veteran, his due process rights are supposed to be followed, and in a non-adversarial system that we're supposed to have at the VA, I've had nothing but adversarial, with the exception of the assistant director, Chad Christensen, and the director over him. They were both decent people. Every other entity that I've called is basically lost. They don't know how to help you. The Minnesota Debt Management Center, I guess this lady thought maybe she was God when she threatened me, and she completely didn't care if I had a hearing waiting. I said, I've never had a hearing on this. I have never had my side heard. And so my anxiety levels up. So I've probably been going off on people when they've called from the VA or hanging up, or when it comes down to representation from our state representatives to Congress and everything like that. I'm kind of tired of the babysitting that goes on, because I've given them more information on what exactly is happening here, but you have the do nothing approach. And when it comes down to the VA hasn't treated anybody with respect. And of course, I would like to talk about the VA motto and what the VBA's mission statement is. And if you read it, it talks about respect, integrity, and honesty, and all this other stuff here. Well, I didn't think that I've received that since basically I've got out of the military when dealing with the VA. I could tell you some horror stories there, but we're not going to go into it. But in the meantime, I've been receiving since 2017 paperwork from the board and the court and everything. And this was after the 2017 letter. So basically, the last letter to end it up here, and I have letters in between here that creates just as much confusion because they're from everybody and anybody. And the last letter I received from the VA was January 2nd, 2019. And it says, Dear Mr. Bohr, the Board of Veterans Appeals made a decision on May 18, 2018. We carefully considered a claim for the apportioned share of the veterans' benefits. After reviewing all the evidence submitted, we have awarded the following benefits to Montana and Cavan. This letter tells you the entitlement amount, the payment start date, and what we decided. It includes the evidence used for our decision. We have also included information about additional benefits, what to do if you disagree with our decision, and who to contact if you have any questions. Now remember what I said. It says the Board of Veterans Appeals made a decision on May 18, 2018. Somebody didn't do their homework, or somebody's not listening, or maybe we have multiple courts or veterans appeals or something else, or maybe somebody's not talking. But anyways, just remember, in the meantime, I've been still waiting on the VA, thinking that I'm going to get a hearing and everything's going to get cleared up. Well, they said that the Board of Veterans Appeals made a decision on May 18, 2018, and they gave me this big graph and how much they were going to take out. And basically, when I thought about this, it looks like the VA was going to take back money that they already paid, that I was entitled to for my children, that I've used on my children. And like I said, with what's being taken out of my check now, I'd have a hard time believing anybody knows what's going on. But anyways, from May 18th, this is the last letter I received from VA, January 2nd, 2019. The Board of Veterans Appeals made a decision on May 18th, 2018. Well, if that's the case, then, sir, here's a letter, July 11th, 2018. May comes before July, 2 months prior. It says, Dear Mr. Bohr, the Department of Veterans Benefits Administration recently received your IRIS inquiry that you would like copies of your ex-wife's financial records that were used against you for her apportionment claim. We are informing you that the apportionment claim was denied. So therefore, we are paying you at the full amount of $3,167.13. You do have life insurance premium for the VA for $102.30 a month for my sons. Therefore, you will be receiving $3,064.83 per month, which our records indicate this amount. So I have multiple letters here. It seems like multiple agencies have been sending me letters and not getting my letters, not getting my hearings, not getting what I'm asking the VA to do. But the whole thing about this too, I would also find it kind of interesting that when I sent letters back to the Board of Veterans Appeals, or what I thought I was sending to in a manila envelope, I actually gave them a call to make sure that they received this information from myself. And somehow I got thrown out into Salt Lake City in Utah to an intake processing center. And I told them, I said, well, why do you have it? I said, this needed to be before the board. And so it kind of begins to make me wonder, how do we know if this is in a situation where these veterans are dealing with undue hardship and stuff like that, if we're running to the court and the court needs the paperwork back, but yet it ends up in Salt Lake City? I have the reference number and an intake center number here. It's, what the heck is it on here? I don't know if I just wrote it quickly. 18082000681, I think. And it says it was processed in on 7/26/18. So I could show you in a handful here of all the documents I had. What I did is I went back and I put them in order. And the VA has either stopped listening to me, or they don't want to see the paperwork, or they don't want to talk to me because, hey, they know they're wrong. And like I said, I've done my part as not only a veteran or a disabled veteran, or my part taking care of my children. You know, when it comes down to my kids, I would hope that the VA, like I had told the judge back when they had denied it because she didn't show need. I told the judge, I said, I know you got a tough job, I think. And I realized he did. And I said, well, if you want to know what type of person I am, I said, if you look at that life insurance, policy that I have for my children, Montana and Cabin, and it also gives you the option there that if something happens to Montana or something happens to Cabin, where these benefits go, I'm pretty sure that it says on there that it would go to Jesse and Jenna, and they were my kids when I was married to my ex-wife. They were her kids from a previous marriage. Now, they're not really getting along with me probably now like we were when we were married, but I also seen the good in those kids. I mean, they were good kids. And also wanted to tell the VA, I was a former behavioral management specialist at the schools. The schools wrote up a report for me there when I was divorced, and the director down there at the school said within a week's time, I possibly could have run that place. So when it comes down to my kids, you can listen to whoever you want to, but if you want to hear the truth, I'd appreciate it if you'd come to me. And that isn't happening here. But when you look at the VA's motto, and when you look at Lincoln's statement to care for those who borne the battle, I find that totally unhonest, because for you to print that and the VBA's mission statement with all these high-tech words or 5 words like integrity and honesty and respect and everything else, well, look at the backlog of claims. How long has it taken for you to grant me 100%? It took 10 years. Either you're not willing to, or you know and you don't care. But when you think about 10 years for waiting on a claim and all the paperwork, kind of like here, back and forth shuffling around, how much more stress, how much more PTSD do these veterans need? I mean, when it comes down to these situations, it's life or death. Sometimes these veterans are getting out of the military and waiting 10 years. And in the meantime, while they're waiting, they're getting a job at McDonald's because they don't work and play well with others. And then when it comes down to it, which knocks them out for the unemployability, because the VA comes back with a statement saying, well, you had sustainable employment or gainful employment. It's kind of like my case, if we want to go back that far, but I'm not even going to go there. I can just say it's been a nightmare since I got out, and I would like you to know that. And a guy said to me one time, he said, they sure care about you when you're in, but when you get out, they don't care. You just take off the uniform, they don't care. You have to wait in line, and it's hurry up and wait, and nobody wants to listen. And I'm not asking for any sympathy, because I feel like this is where the VA is going. This is what they want. They're putting up walls. They don't want people to talk face to face and get things cleared anymore. They want to make it harder on veterans, harder on the claims processing to get a claim through. And therefore, it all ends up about money. But it has nothing to do with the laws, because I don't think you're following the laws and the true intent of the laws. And when it comes down to it, the VA can hide that. They can manipulate it in their own narrative. They can look good, like the gentleman that wrote the letter to Secretary Shinseki for me, the letter that I have. I actually met him out there in Washington, D.C. with Simon Alvarado. And the guy said to me, he said, well, Jerry, there's nothing wrong with looking good. And I said, sir, looking good at the cost of these disabled veterans and their benefits that they earned, I have a problem with that. And when it comes down to it, like I said, there are good people at the VA. I firmly believe it. But I've run into very few in over 10 years on a simple process of an apportionment that has been denied multiple times, vacated at the Veterans Appeals or Board of Veterans Appeals. And then they sent me down for another hearing. And then I went through it with my dad again, waited. Then I got back that they had denied the apportionment. 2 weeks later, out of the blue, get another letter from the board or the Court of Veterans Appeals or whatever, and all of a sudden it's on again, off again, on. Nobody wants to know that this apportionment claim was denied. This is a lie, and nobody's been willing to listen to me. So I have a lot more information here, but I didn't want to make it so long that you couldn't or wouldn't even listen to it. And whoever this goes out, maybe this will go out to disabled veterans who are having the same problems that I am. Maybe this will get to somebody there at the VA that actually cares and wants to fix the program. Thanks again.